Everything you picture when you hear the word Satan, the redskin, the horns, the pitchfork, the goat legs, none of it is in the Bible. Not one detail. That image was invented over 1,000 years after the Bible was completed by medieval artists who had never read the actual text in its original language. The real biblical Satan is described exactly once in extraordinary detail in the book of Ezekiel, and what it describes is not a monster. It is the most beautiful, most intelligent, most powerful being God ever created, covered in jewels, standing in the very presence of God, a guardian of the divine throne. Tonight, we are going to read that description, word by word, and by the end, you will understand why his fall was not a horror story. It was a tragedy. The name Satan is not even a proper name in most of the Old Testament. In Hebrew, Hasatan literally means the accuser or the adversary. It is a title, a rule, almost a job description, not a personal name. In the book of Job, Hasatan appears as a member of God's divine council, whose function is to test the sincerity of human faithfulness. This is a completely different picture from what most people imagine. The being who eventually becomes what we call Satan started somewhere else entirely in a passage that most churches never preach on. Because what it actually says is more disturbing and more strangely beautiful than anything Dante or Milton ever invented. In this video, we are going to read Ezekiel 28 in full, the single most detailed biblical description of this being's original glory and his catastrophic fall. We will cover Isaiah 14 and the origin of the name Lucifer. We will explain exactly where the horns, the redskin, and the pitchfork actually came from, because the answer involves Renaissance art, not scripture. And we will end with the question that this passage is actually about the same question we asked about the hierarchy of angels. What does it mean that the most perfect being God ever created chose entirely on his own to destroy himself? Ezekiel chapter 28 is, on its surface, a prophecy against a human ruler, the king of the Phoenician city of Tyre, a wealthy trading port. Verses 1 through 10 describe this king's arrogance. He believed his wealth made him a god. That part is straightforward historical prophecy. But then, in verse 11, the text shifts. Ezekiel is told to take up a lament, not against the king as a man, but against something else entirely, described using language that no human king could ever fit. This describes something beyond any earthly ruler. Many call this a dual prophecy. The words are addressed to the king, but the description reaches back to a being at creation's dawn. You are the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. The Hebrew word for seal, chatam, implies a divine master. Verse 13 continues, You were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was your covering: the ruby, the topaz, and the diamond, the beryl, onyx, jasper, lapis lazuli, turquoise, and emerald. The workmanship of your settings and sockets was in you. This is not armor. This is a being whose entire physical form radiated light through precious stones, like the high priest of heaven. Verse 14, You were the anointed cherub who covered. I established you. You were on the holy mountain of God. You walked back and forth in the midst of the stones of fire. This being was stationed at the center of everything sacred. Cherubim are the terrifying, multi-faced guardian beings. He was specifically the one whose wings stretch over the mercy seat of the ark. He was not a distant servant. He was stationed at the highest order of the angelic hierarchy, guarding the very glory of God. Verse 15. You were perfect in your ways from the day you were created, till iniquity was found in you. This was not a flawed being. This was the single most perfect creation God had ever made, choosing to corrupt himself. Verse 17 explains, Your heart was lifted up because of your beauty. You corrupted your wisdom for the sake of your splendor. This is the precise definition of pride. Pride in something completely real and magnificent, which became the mechanism of his destruction. Verse 16, Your heart was lifted up. Therefore I cast you as profane out of the mountain of God, and I destroyed you. Cast out, destroyed. not in the sense of ceasing to exist, but destroyed in function, in position, and in glory. The guardian of God's holiness, expelled from the very place he was created to protect. This is the fall of Lucifer, but notice, the name Lucifer does not appear here. That name comes from somewhere else, and the story behind it is just as revealing. The name Lucifer comes from an entirely different passage, Isaiah chapter 14. Like Ezekiel 28, this chapter is, on the surface, a taunt against a specific earthly ruler, in this case, the king of Babylon. Isaiah 14:12 says, "How you are fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning. How you are cut down to the ground." In Hebrew, the actual word used here is Hellel, meaning shining one, or morning star. When the Old Testament was translated into Latin in the 4th century by Jerome, Helle was rendered as Lucifer, a Latin term meaning light. It was simply the standard Latin name for the planet Venus seen at dawn. Jerome was not naming a demon. He was translating an astronomical term. Isaiah 14:13-14 describes this figure's ambition. "I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will be like the Most High." This is the same pattern of pride we saw in Ezekiel, expressed as direct, verbal ambition. Early Christian theologians, like Origen of Alexandria, began reading this passage allegorically as a description of Satan's fall. By the medieval period, theologians had fully merged Isaiah's Lucifer, Ezekiel's covering cherub, and the serpent of Genesis into a single character. It is worth noting that major Protestant reformers argued that Isaiah 14 is about the literal king of Babylon and nothing more. The connection to Satan is theological tradition, not an explicit statement anywhere in the original text. Why does this distinction matter? Because it changes how we should read these texts. The Bible never says Lucifer equals Satan. That entire composite picture was built over 1,000 years of theological interpretation, much of it sound, some of it speculative. What we can say is this: there existed a being of supreme created perfection, whose pride led to his expulsion from God's presence. So where did the modern image of Satan come from? The horns and goat legs are borrowed largely from Pan, the Greek god. The pitchfork is a direct visual borrowing from Poseidon's trident and common farming tools, repurposed as a symbol of torment. The red skin became standardized through medieval morality plays, where red dye was the most dramatic color for costuming the villain. Dante's Inferno and Milton's Paradise Lost did more to cement the modern image of Satan than any biblical text. Compare that invented image to what Ezekiel wrote: a being covered in precious gemstones, perfect in beauty, full of wisdom, walking among stones of fire on the holy mountain of God. The Bible's description is not grotesque. It is breathtaking. This is why the deception in 2 Corinthians is so effective. Satan himself transforms himself into an angel of light. The real danger is that he still looks beautiful, still sounds reasonable, still appears as light, exactly as he did before the fall. The composite image, horns, pitchfork, red skin, works as a moral teaching tool. It is simple, clear, and communicates evil to a child. But the cost has been significant. Generations who have never encountered the actual, far more unsettling biblical text. It is not about a cartoon villain, but about the catastrophic potential hidden inside pride, even in the most magnificent being ever created. Here's what I think most people miss about this story. It is not primarily a horror story. It is the first tragedy in the universe. I've been given everything: perfection, beauty, wisdom, proximity to the divine. Destroyed, not by an external enemy, not by deception from outside, but by an internal choice to worship the gift instead of the giver. This is the same warning Paul gives in 1 Timothy 3-6 about church leaders, that a new convert should not be placed in leadership, lest he become puffed up with pride and fall into the condemnation of the devil. Paul is saying the mechanism of Satan's fall is not exotic. It is the most common spiritual danger that exists, and it is available to anyone of any level of giftedness, in any era, and this connects directly to everything we have covered on this channel. The being described in Ezekiel 28 is, according to most theological traditions, the same figure who led the rebellion of the Watchers, described in the book of Enoch, our very first video. The same figure behind the deception that produced the Nephilim. The same figure operating behind the Antichrist's rise to power, according to Paul's description in 2 Thessalonians. The entire narrative arc of dark spiritual history in Scripture begins with one moment. A perfect being looking at his own reflection and choosing himself over his creator. Everything else, the fallen angels, the giants, the corruption of nations, the final Antichrist, is, in a theological sense, the long aftermath of that single choice. Let us bring this all together. The Bible's actual description of Satan, found in Ezekiel 28, describes a being of supreme created perfection, covered in precious stones, stationed as a guardian cherub at the holy mountain of God, whose pride in his own beauty led to his expulsion from heaven. The name Lucifer comes from a separate passage in Isaiah 14, originally addressed to a human king, later merged with Ezekiel's imagery by early Christian theologians. The horns, red skin, and pitchfork that define the modern image of Satan come entirely from pagan mythology, medieval art, and Renaissance literature, not from Scripture. And the real warning embedded in the original text is not about a monster to fear, but about the catastrophic potential of pride in any being, however gifty, who chooses to worship the gift instead of the giver. If this video changed how you picture this figure, share it, because most people have never read these passages for themselves. Subscribe to The Ancient Verdict if you are not already, because every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday we go deeper into the truths that history and tradition have buried under centuries of assumption. Next video, we are going back to the question that started this whole series. What other forbidden text exists that the church never talks about? Leave in the comments, did you know the image of Satan with horns was never actually in the Bible? I read every single comment. See you in the next video.